If you want to be the best you can possibly be in whatever it is that you do, then you need to develop one thing above everything else, and that is a growth mindset. So this video is going to explain exactly how you can develop one. If you've never heard of the term growth mindset before, then here's a quick summary. A psychologist by the name of Carol Dweck has for decades studied people's own perceptions surrounding their learning and intelligence. As an elementary school teacher, she found that children could be separated into two groups. Those who believed that their intelligence and abilities were fixed, set in stone, and nothing could help change that. In other words, those with a fixed mindset. And then those who believed their intelligence and abilities were fluid and could increase with enough hard work. In other words, those with a growth mindset. Over the past few decades, this concept has been studied in countless fields and has clearly demonstrated that in the pursuit of excellence and potential fulfillment, those who reach the top of their game are those with growth mindsets. And there are countless reasons as to why this happens, but here are three of the most important. 1. Embracing challenges versus avoiding challenges. Those with a growth mindset love a challenge. They love to push themselves beyond their existing capabilities. They're more engaged with the process of learning new things as opposed to the outcomes. And those with a fixed mindset hate to challenge themselves. They fear that they'll be shown up if they don't succeed at what they try, and because of this, they're either completely unwilling to try new things, or they just get complacent with their current skill level. 2. Perseverance versus giving up easily. Those with a growth mindset will continually persevere when they're met with hurdles, setbacks, and near misses. This is obviously a direct symptom of embracing challenges. It becomes almost a fun game in of itself, where you edge closer and closer to developing new skills, techniques, and habits. In contrast, those with a fixed mindset give up easily. At the slightest bit of resistance or friction, they call it quits. They get frustrated, think of themselves as not having the ability, and fail to recognize the process of learning anything often involves gradual, steady progress that comes from putting the reps in. 3. Learning from failure versus seeing failure as final. Those with a growth mindset see failure as an opportunity to learn. They reflect on what went well, but more importantly, what didn't go well. They try to unpick the exact elements or mechanics of why something didn't pay off or go to plan. They then seek to use this feedback in a proactive way so that they can get nearer to their goal or objective next time. But those with a fixed mindset see failure as final. Not succeeding in their eyes is because they're not good enough, and they believe that that's something that cannot change. And they fail to recognize any form of progress or development, and again, just get fixated on the outcome of not actually achieving what it was that they set out to achieve. So those are three of the main distinctions between growth mindsets and fixed mindsets. And look, all of us fall into both camps in different contexts, but it is possible to start developing a growth mindset so that you can apply that to all kinds of challenges, and particularly those things that you find most difficult. And so now we're going to discuss three very simple things that you can start doing to develop this more consistent growth mindset. Number 1, make yet your favorite word. Now, we've all been guilty of displaying fixed mindsets in certain contexts where we tend to make very definitive statements about our abilities, skill levels within that certain domain. So we'll say to ourselves, I can't do this, or I'm no good at this. And the problem with that is that those statements tend to become internalized over time, and they really do become our reality. And so that prevents us from trying to overcome any of the hurdles or the setbacks that we face when trying to learn something or just improve on something. But a key distinction for people with growth mindsets is instead they do recognize that they may suck at something, but they hang on to the possibility that that can change. And that comes through the word yet. So they'll say things like, I can't do this yet. I haven't understood this yet. They hang on to the possibility of improvement. And this too gets internalized and keeps us subconsciously engaged on getting better, irrespective of how bad things are going. And I imagine this power of yet would have played a significant role in the likes of Bayern Munich winger Serge Gnabry over the past few years. 5 years ago, he was loaned out by Arsenal to West Brom, arguably one of the worst teams in the Premier League at the time, and he was told he wasn't actually good enough to get into their squad and played just 3 times. And today, he's perhaps the most feared out-and-out winger in the world and scored 6 goals in last year's Champions League against top Premier League opposition. Do you think he would have got to where he is now if back then he said to himself, I'm not even good enough to get into the team of a bad Premier League team? No, he had the self-awareness to realise that he had the potential, but he just wasn't actualising it at that time. So the next time you catch yourself making one of those definitive statements about your abilities or skills within a certain craft, just make sure you tag on yet, because that is enough to open up the possibility of improvement and development, a key marker of having a growth mindset. Number 2, focus on process rather than outcomes. This is a bit of a repetitive theme within my videos for the 7 people who actually do watch every single one. But I think when it comes down to it, for anyone wanting to improve within a craft, they tend to get fixed on the outcomes. Now that's very problematic because in worrying about that, we fail to recognize what is it that we actually need to do in the here and now in terms of the actions that lead to that result. But when trying to improve and get better on something, it's very problematic to become wedded to the outcome, because in the early stages of learning anything, there are going to be outputs, and that is going to make you feel if you think about that too much. And hands up, I've been guilty of this when making these videos. It's quite disheartening to spend 10 to 12 hours writing, filming, editing, and then publishing for something to then get 30 views. But what's keeping me going is just focusing on improving one small part of the process each time that I make a video. Whether it's finding a new way to sort of fade out some music, whether it's mastering some sort of zoom in, zoom out shots, or whether it's just trying to become a bit more authentic and interesting on camera. And if I can make some small little adjustments and improvements every time, then that's actually far more enjoyable. And as long as I focus on just improving the process ever so slightly each time, then hopefully the outcomes will become better, which for me is ultimately informing people on things that can help them improve in their respective performance domains. So for yourself, if you're falling into fixed mindset territory when trying to learn a tricky song on a musical instrument, then just focus on nailing a specific chord sequence and slowly chain it together. Or if you're struggling to find the right answer to a certain type of maths equation, just focus on nailing the next step in the calculation process. And ultimately in doing this, we actually tend to enjoy things a lot more. Being immersed and in that flow state during the act, practice or training is often a far better feeling than when it ends, even if it's a good outcome. So those people who continually grow and develop their growth mindset are the same people who just fall in love with the process of whatever it is that they're working on. 3, stop seeking approval. And this last one is a huge barrier for all of us because in various different areas of our lives, all of us are subject to the pressures and expectations of other people. But unfortunately, this pressure can ultimately have a number of bad side effects. The pushy parent who demands top grades from their child all too often ends up having a child who repeatedly fails, either as an act of rebellion or they become crippled by being labelled in fixed ways, such as being called stupid or lazy. The feedback and input from other people can really ultimately dictate whether we do develop that growth or fixed mindset. And unfortunately, those who seemingly have our best interests at heart, such as parents, teachers, managers, and coaches, a huge majority of them do speak in quite fixed terms. So it's important to tune out those negative inputs and pieces of feedback. When it comes down to it, most people don't start or pursue something because they're too consumed with getting instantaneous approval from other people. They won't put out videos, pieces of writing, and performances of any kind because they're too consumed with winning praise and avoiding criticism. But those with a growth mindset fundamentally do what they do for themselves. It's great to get some applause, some praise, and pats on the back, but that comes secondary. And it's also fine to have people criticize, tell you you're no good, or even laugh at what you've done or created. Just think of these as growing pains. They're a nuisance, but necessary. So whilst having a growth mindset has predominantly been aligned to how people embrace challenges, I think it's also something that needs to be aligned to self-confidence and self-assurance. That you're able to completely detach from the judgments and opinions of certain others. Some people will be in your corner, and it's important to listen to the constructive criticism that they have, because that is what will enable you to grow. But there are some people who won't be in your corner, who are just there to vilify and harshly criticize you. And so with those people, the best thing you can do is just forget about them. So that's growth mindset for you. Let me know in the comments below if you've got any other tips that you think are particularly useful for developing a growth mindset. And if there's maybe anything that you're struggling to develop that growth mindset on, do drop a comment below. I'm happy to give some advice. And thanks for watching, really appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next video.